German has a reputation for complicated grammar, but here's the good news. The basic word order is actually very clear and logical once you know the rules. The part that confuses most learners, especially English speakers, is that German word order is actually more flexible than English. That's why if you try to translate word for word, it can sometimes feel like nothing makes sense. Sentences don't seem to line up the way you expect. But here's the secret. Once you know what to focus on, like for example where the verb belongs and how elements can move around, suddenly the whole system clicks into place. So in this video, I'll break down the essentials of German word order step by step, show you practical examples and give you sentences you can use right away. So let's get started. If you're new here, hallo und herzlich willkommen. I'm Salome, a native German teacher, polyglot, and the founder of the German Fluency Academy. I help beginners go from zero knowledge to confident and conversational in German, focusing on real-world German that you can actually use in daily life. So if that's your goal too, the best way to get started is with my free beginner workshop. You'll find the link to join in the description box below. Alright, let's look at German word order. The basic rule, verb in position 2. The golden rule in German main clauses is this. The verb always comes in the second position. That means no matter what you put at the beginning of the sentence, the verb holds its spot. For example, ich lerne Deutsch. Du spielst Fußball. Wir gehen ins Kino. So you can see how all of these verbs are always placed on the second position. But it's also heute regnet es. Today rains it. Am Montag arbeite ich. On Monday work I. Notice how even when I move heute or am Montag to the front, the verb regnet and arbeite stays in the second place. This is very different from English where the verb doesn't shift around like this. But in German, whatever comes first, ich, morgen, am Samstag, heute Abend, it doesn't matter, the verb is still second. The subject can move. Another important factor to note is that the subject doesn't always have to come first. You can start your sentence with another element, as long as the verb is still in the second place. So for example, ich trinke Kaffee. I drink coffee. Here, trinken is on position 2, just the same as in English. But now, when I say jeden Morgen trinke ich Kaffee, every morning drink I coffee, the verb stays on position 2. So you can see how jeden Morgen comes first, but the verb doesn't change. It stays on position 2, and that's the key pattern. Time, manner, place. Another super practical structure in German is the order of details in the sentence, like time, manner, and place. That means when you add extra information, there is a natural flow. First, you say when something happens, then how, so with whom, by what means, in what way, and finally, where. For example, ich gehe morgen mit meinen Freunden ins Kino. Now let's flip it. Morgen gehe ich mit meinen Freunden ins Kino. This is still totally correct because the verb gehen stays in second position. Here are a few more examples for you to practice. Ich esse heute mit meiner Familie zu Hause. Wir fahren nächste Woche mit dem Zug nach Hamburg. Am Abend lerne ich alleine in meinem Zimmer. I hope through these practical examples that you were able to observe the pattern naturally. Basically, you say when something's happening before how or with whom something's happening, and then where something's happening comes at the end. This pattern makes German sentences sound smooth and more natural. And here is the flexible part. However, since German word order is more flexible than English, you can still swap things around depending on what you want to emphasize. Now you might think, great, I understood all of that, verb goes second, I can move things around, but how do I know where to start or with which information to start a sentence? Very good question. The answer is you start with the information that is most important in the context. For example, if someone asks you, wann trinkst du Kaffee? So when do you drink coffee? The time becomes most important. Therefore, I want to mention this information first. Also, am Morgen trinke ich Kaffee. Or if someone asks, was trinkst du am Morgen? So what do you drink? Now, the what becomes the most important information in this context. Therefore, I answer with Kaffee trinke ich am Morgen. So in the first case, you highlight the when, and in the second example, you highlight the what. But the verb still stays in the second position. That's the anchor. But don't stress too much about always choosing the right starting point. Just remember the verb is in the second place and lead with the detail you want to emphasize on. Now that you know how to build clearer statement sentences in German, the next step is learning how to ask questions. And the good news is German questions follow a very clear and straightforward pattern. In fact, there are only two main types of questions you need to master: yes and no questions and W questions. So let's take a look at both. Yes and no questions. In German, yes, no questions are super simple. You don't need extra words like do or does like in English. You just move the verb to the very front of the sentence. For example, lernst du Deutsch? Trinkst du Kaffee? Magst du Musik? Kommst du morgen? Notice how the verb comes first, the subject follows, and everything else comes afterwards. If you can make a normal sentence, you can instantly turn it into a yes-no question by just swapping the word order. So for example, du lernst Deutsch, that's a statement. The question for that would be, lernst du Deutsch? And the answer is usually just a simple ja oder nein. Moving on to the W questions. W questions are questions that start with a W word, so a question word, like what, where, when, who, and why. Common ones you'll use all the time in German are, for example, was, wo, wann, wie, wer, warum. And the structure is this. You put the question word first, then the verb on position 2, then the subject, and then the rest of the sentence. Here are some more practical examples. Wo wohnst du? Was machst du? Wann kommst du? Wie heißt du? Wer ist das? Warum lernst du Deutsch? Now, if we compare this again with English, in German you don't need do or are. You just put the verb directly after the W word and you have your question. Inside the German Fluency Academy, we practice exactly that every single week in our live workshops and community activities, helping students form sentences more quickly and improve their conversational skills. If you'd like to join us, the easiest way is to sign up for the free taster lesson linked below. By the end of that session, you'll know exactly how to take the next steps with us. So let's quickly recap what we've learned today. In main sentences, the verb always stays in the second position. You can begin with different parts of the sentence, but the verb never leaves that second spot. When you add details, there is a natural flow, which is time, manner, and place. For yes, no questions, the verb comes first. And for W questions, it's the question word, the verb, and then the subject. Once you get comfortable with these patterns, you'll have the building blocks to form correct sentences in German. I hope you have found this helpful. I'll be back next week on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Germany time, with another lesson for you guys. Das ist alles für heute. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!